Welcome to the Film Angle, or should I say, Ghibli Angle, the series where I introduce Alex to the wonderful world of Studio Ghibli and the creative genius of Hayao Miyazaki. This week, we're diving deep into Grave of the Fireflies. I'm Kris.
And I'm Alex.
So, Alex, we're pretty not that far still in our Ghibli journey, but it feels like we've covered a lot of ground. It feels like, you know, this was a pretty relatively scarce subgenre of cinema for you at one point. You dabbled, you'd seen Spirited Away, and now we're just like deciding to do all of it, not just the Miyazakis, but all of the Ghibli films from start to finish.
I'm doing them all.
Absolutely.
Doing them all. But I do feel like this one has been this has been like they do this as well film, you know? Like everything else has kind of been like, this is what I thought Ghibli was, kind of. A couple of the early stuff, a little bit different, but this one I'm like, oh, we're doing this.
Well, I guess the thing that makes that the outlier is that this is the first film not directed by Hayao Miyazaki. But the first of many wonderful and, as you said, quite different films from Miyazaki's of Isao Takahata, who was a lot more interested in the slice of life aspects that anime could bring to cinema, more hard-hitting topics. That today is definitely probably at the pinnacle of that sort of term. This is not an easy film, although it's animated. You know, it doesn't mean that animated films are just for children. This is the first film that you show people, or you show somebody who might say that, like, I don't watch animated films because, you know, I've grown out of them. And you're like, well, watch Grave of the Fireflies and tell me that you're not a broken human being by the end of this film.
Would you show a child this film, Kris? Like, do you think like this is still intended for a younger audience, or do you think this is like only adult?
Interesting. I don't think this is for like a young child. I think some topics are depicted that are just like, you know, you have to be a certain level of maturity to appreciate them. I think like it's the same thing. I put this on the same level as like Spielberg's Schindler's List in terms of like, you know, I think the right young person who is ready to meet the material and wants to learn something about a group of people or a part of history that they didn't know about, then I think that's absolutely fine. But yes, I wouldn't show this to anyone who was less than a teenager. And I do think it's one of those films that anything that deals with children bearing the weight of the adult world, it seems to just get more difficult to watch the older I get, certainly. I watched this at like the age of 18. And yeah, sure, it was hard. But I actually found it this time, Alex, before we get into the plot, a really difficult film to finish. And and that surprised me. For a film I'd seen many times, I find it like, as soon as I was reminded of what was in store for me from the early ongoings of the film, I was like, oh man, like I know I'm going to sit in for this for another 60 minutes. I'm not going to have any moments of reprieve in this film. And there are moments of light and wonder within this film, but they are short-lived.
They are short-lived. Obviously, I'm sure we'll get into it when we get into the plot, like you said. But there is an element of the film does hold your hand at the start. It does say to you, like, this isn't all going to be fine and dandy, and these two characters are not alive by the end of the film. It does it in a kind of like way as me, who is somebody who is new to the film, kind of goes, oh, okay, so are they dead? I think they're dead. Are we? Is that what we're doing? And then, but it does that really good thing that films do, like the good films that do that, which reveal a little bit of kind of the end at the start, is they make you forget about it, and that's what I kind of liked about it. And then at the end, you're like, oh god, they're really going to do this, aren't they? Like they're destined to die, and I don't want them to die.
Yeah, and try watching this film on a rewatch. when that it just hits harder even more for some reason,
Yes.
because it's like, here we are, we're going to self-inflict this pain on ourselves again. The film,
I can see that the scope of their deaths, especially the young girl,
yes, Setsuko.
Sasuko. I can see on rewatch why those tender moments might be tinged even more with an element of sadness, because you just know the way it goes. Interesting. Go on then, get into the plot.
The movie Grave of the Fireflies is set in the backdrop of late World War II. It is 1945. And American bombers are hitting Japan, hitting Tokyo really hard. And stuck in the middle of it, we're sort of dive straight away into Seta, sort of young teenage brother, and his younger sister, Setsuko, who is, basically a toddler. They are taking shelter from another air raid. They get separated from their mother. And the movie starts with them trying to relocate her before there's a little bit of bad news where they end up having to go their separate ways. And Seta has to look after Setsuko by himself for the duration of the film and survive the war.
A little bit of bad news.
A little bit of bad news. Well, the thing is, it's a little bit ambiguous. That news to begin with is probably why I use that terrible term. But it becomes a story about how we as adults feel the youth of our world. These children. The movie invites the prospect of maybe judging Seta as an older brother. There's some decisions that he has to make in this film, and they're not necessarily the choices an adult would make that was, watching the film and had to decide what was to happen to these children.
Yeah. But
the film asks you to kind of show a lot of grace for these characters and appreciate their situation. There's not a lot of films I can remember, certainly from Western filmmakers, that depict this side of the war. And I think that's why your point earlier on, should you show this to a child? Well, I think you should show this to, the right child, because it's important to understand that there are two sides to every depiction of the war effort. And we get often an Americanized version of that, where, Japanese soldiers, if we're watching a South Pacific War film, they're just kind of cannon fodder for, American soldiers in these South Pacific War movies. And, that applies to any country. So it's a broad topic narrowed down to this really heartbreaking story about a brother and sister trying to survive. And in the movie, you're just crossing your fingers and kind of gritting your teeth and hoping that people will be graceful to them and that they'll come across some good luck.
And maybe the start was a red herring.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of there's not MacGuffins to say, but there's a lot of visual metaphors that the movie likes to hang on to for the film. A lot of, especially with objects. I think about the sweet canister of the hard candies that they managed to make. They struggle with obtaining food, rice rations throughout this whole film, and are at the mercy of other people. But this little canister of sweets that they manage to save and keep for very special occasions, it's ceremonial between the brother and sister. And at the start of the film, when Seta, the start of the film is the end of the film. So Seta's at a train station. The war is over already, and he, surrounded by other teenage boys, are also dying at the train station. But they all have their own little stories going on, but the camera, just for this movie, has chose to focus in on this boy and tell his story. And that kind of makes it even worse. And a local sort of authority guy comes over and picks up the sweet canister that's beside Seta's body and sees it only as a piece of rubbish and goes to throw it into the grass. And that's how, the movie sort of begins. And so when you're watching this movie a second time and you know what that sweet canister symbolizes, it's just like to see it thrown away and tossed away as a piece of garbage it's really, really tough.
Yes, yeah, I can see that. Maybe this is one of those films that almost demands a rewatch,
Mm-hmm.
despite how difficult its subject matter. Because I imagine it hits even harder on that second go round. For me, like that start was still kind of within that magical world of Ghibli that I've seen so far. Despite being down and depressing, I was like, okay, yeah, I can see this. I can see this being a Ghibli film. And it wasn't until we see the mum after they find her, or at least Sata. Is it Sata?
Yes. Yeah.
Sata finds her, and she's been bandaged up. Her whole body bandaged up, and basically she's just like bloody and weeping,
Mm-hmm.
and unconscious on the ground, and later not unconscious but dead. It's just like a horrible, horrible image, a horrible visual. And
Yeah.
that was where I was like, oh, we can go this far in these films, because I'd heard this was the sad one, this is the dark one, like, but I thought it was more going to be like metaphors and stuff like that. But no,
Uh,
they full on I guess push the boundaries of what I've seen in animation so far, especially I guess when dealing with war. And then you've got these kind of visuals as they go through the Japanese countryside of them burning corpses and stuff like this,
mm,
cannon fodder from the war. Maybe not cannon fodder, but like the damage of war to
mm-hmm.
civilian populations. Because obviously every war film we've seen would have put Japan on the bad side. You know what I mean? But we
Sure.
don't get to see how it affects the civilians.
It also depicts
Um,
the civilians of being exhausted by this and not wanting it to go on. Like
uh-huh.
there's not a lot of glory to be found in this film, a lot of
No.
patriotism, just exhaustion. Any patriotism that's depicted actually is displayed within Seta, trying to mirror his absentee father and try to be loyal to him. And again, it's just showing the how fragile young minds are to propaganda, or the propaganda is not in the film, but we can tell that this boy has been exposed to it in the past. Yet all the adult world around him is just exhausted and starving, and he learns that very quickly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But also, there's an element of he has been trusted with almost being the man of the household, and he has to look after his mum and his sister. And obviously, when his mum dies, he truly has to look after his sister.
Mm-hmm.
And I love their relationship. Their relationship is so
Yes.
incredibly sweet. And I think out of any film that I've seen, because Miyazaki does obviously have a lot of child characters in these films, but I think Setsuko is just feels like a child. The voice acting, everything, the movements, the what she says, what she does. Oh man, just like the
Mm,
most childlike animation, and I guess that makes things even harder as you go down the line. But I really was like this whole film for me like rode on their relationship, the two
sure.
of them together. I just like was so enamored by their love for each other, the way she looks up to him, the way he looks out for her, and I know obviously the you could look at his decisions further down the line leading to a kind of the horrible outcome that happens. But it's not out of uh, stupidity; it's more out of naivety, isn't it?
Of
It's
course.
more out of this idea that he thinks this is the best way to protect her. So yeah, no, it's powerful, isn't it? It's powerful. So it's
Yeah.
difficult. I never thought when I went in knowing it was dark, I never thought I'd see like a malnourished child take her last breaths in the final in
Mm,
the final minutes of the film. But there we are.
yes. And yeah, we'll probably talk about the ending, because the ending is probably what stays with everybody who watches the film. It certainly stays with me. It's just, even if I haven't seen the film in quite a while, I do think of the ending of this movie on quite a regular basis. It's just stayed with me that well. And I think it's so poignantly kind of shot and kind of composed throughout the film. I think the hard part of the movie for me, we're going deep in the bellows of despair here, but the relationship that they have when they have to find refuge with their father's sister, so their auntie. They have to stay with her because the mother's just obviously passed away, and they have no contact with the mother's parents, the family that live in Tokyo. So they have no option but to go to their aunt, who is indifferent, to say the least. And not in a typically overt way, but she's cruel in her indifference. And there are a lot of things that she doesn't believe. She believes that they're kind of little brats that are kind of, stealing food from their mouths, even though that they're quite well off within the village. They're not struggling with rations. So, when rice comes to the table or broth comes to the table, she's more keen to feed her children. And, instead she gives Seta the broth instead of giving him the meat from the meal instead that she gives to her children. And it's these little moments that are visual moments that are really difficult to come by. The moment, Alex, where they still have their mother's kimonos. It's the only possession they have left of their mother. And the aunt suggests, "Oh, why don't you sell them on and you can then have your own rice and you don't have to take from our table." And
Yes.
which is horrible to begin with. And then they trade the rice. They almost feel so celebratory. They get 15 kilograms of rice, I think it was. And the aunt puts in a jar for them and makes it this whole thing. It's like, wow, you have this own independence you have. And then she starts taking from that portion too. And it's just this absolute bombardment of realistic indifference and cruelty that happens to these kids. It's not Disneyfied in any sort of way. I'm glad you didn't watch this. I'm glad we're not doing dubs at all. I know we did a dub for My Neighbor Totoro, but you'd seen the film before.
Yes.
This film probably...
No more dubs.
Yeah, this probably has the worst dub of them all.
Yeah.
The little girl that you said is so, it's so amazing that they actually had a young child that age to portray her in the Japanese version, and it comes across really authentic. But in the English version, I forget the actress's name. She is a character actor, but it's played by someone in their 30s. And it comes across that way.
Okay. Yeah.
It doesn't feel like that's actually ever being played. Setsuko's ever being played by an actual child.
We've got Luna Hamilton, but apparently this is in the 2025 version. So there must have been an update to one that maybe you saw. Emily Neves does the 2012 one.
That would be the version.
And Connie Orr in the 1998 version.
Either or. I can't remember the specific one, but I remember it being not working. Let's just say.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. And I mean, like, why would you? It's an intrinsically Japanese story. And, I think anybody would find poignancy in this story. Yeah, but again, I don't want to just list endless horrible things that happen, because there is beauty to be found in this story, and moments of wonder and hope, and the joy that they find within each other in their moments whenever they're in the cave that they kind of find and make it their own home. Although for us as the viewer, it's sad to see, but they find real joy. They find, it's the only place where, people aren't sort of bombarding them or taking their food away or anything like that. Just, Seta can be the big brother he wants to be. This is also based on a sort of semi-fiction memoir as well. I didn't actually realize this till the rewatch, Alex. So the writer is Akiyuki Nusaka, who actually wrote Grave of the Fireflies as a book back in the 60s, 20 years before this film was released. And he had just had his first daughter, and he felt some guilt because Seta is him. And he had a very, very similar experience growing up where his family died during the bombings, and he had to look after his younger sister. And she died of starvation. But obviously the difference between Grave of the Fireflies is that he lived and they didn't both die.
Yes.
So there's this tremendous amount of guilt that was written into that story. And that whole book was a semi-fictitious sort of like apology to her, which makes this just even more upsetting.
Yeah, that really does. That
Um,
really does. And I
yes,
think as well, like, because I went on Letterboxd after the film, and obviously a lot of people love this film, and rightfully so. It is very, very good.
sure.
But a lot of the criticisms leveled at it were at Sata himself. This idea that, like,
I
it
find
just
I
seems stupid. I can't understand why he wouldn't go back to his aunt, why he was too proud to go back there, and all this kind of stuff. Like, it wasn't that bad. It was better than malnutrition and all that
yeah.
kind of stuff. And I was thinking, I was like, no, somebody's bad. They're all on the screen here. The story hasn't come from nowhere. I don't think the I don't think it was intentional that obviously the wrong decision was made, and there's so much guilt wrapped up in the film, and it makes sense that it came from a very real place, which is sad. Don't level criticism at this guy.
Yeah, I mean, Akiyuki Nisaka, who wrote the book, he said that when he was a boy and they were getting rations for rice, that he deliberately, he was suffering with malnutrition, and he was a child, and he would have stolen his sister's food and would have ate it himself, and that is the main source of his guilt. Is that it was an uncontrollable urge that he had as a child and couldn't overcome, but wish he could have. And I think it's immature to judge children in a wartime setting where they're abandoned.
Very heightened emotions, incredibly traumatic events playing out. No matter how much you try to spin it as, the planes look like fireflies in the sky, doesn't matter. We all know what's going on, and it must be very difficult for for a child's brain to comprehend that.
Yeah, I find it quite disappointing that a lot of people would have that take on the film. Yeah, I never felt that way for sure, and I can imagine even watching him be with the aunt, or all the sort of inequalities that happen in a household. Like, it's hard enough to watch that, but imagine being that child in that moment.
Who thinks he has to protect his sister from that?
Exactly. He would rather see momentary happiness in Seta than have to endure that. And probably there's a bit of denial too. Like, he's probably like, "Oh, my sister's never going to die. I'm gonna fix this. I'll sort this out." So yeah, it's incredibly naive to judge a child like that. The movie just kind of conjures up a lot of feelings, unfortunately. But I would honestly, if anyone's listening to this and hasn't watched Grave of the Fireflies before, it is essential viewing, 100%. I mean, it's not a long film; it's only 89 minutes long, but you feel every one of those minutes.
Yep.
Really deep down. There's so many amazing moments, like when they go to the beach for the first time and it's so wonderful, and they go swimming, and suddenly they come back on the beach and there's a dead body. Which is
one of my favorite scenes as well, I think because it really depicts that kind of like moments of joy and happiness, and then that kind of stark realization of what's unfolding during this time period. It's I think that is actually one of my favorite scenes in the film.
But the accuracy of child behavior, especially with Setsuko, when she sees the body, and Seta just says, "Don't," each says, "Don't look at that," turns around, and there's like 2 seconds of her spinning the wheels in her head before reverting back into skipping again. This sort of like mental sort of fortitude that young children have inbuilt in themselves. Like you said earlier on, when they're burning bodies in the side of the road, and Setsuko is more concerned of just having to go to the toilet. It's so heartbreaking to kind of just see such in an animated form. It's so expressive to see it depicted so accurately. It never feels like you're watching an animated film. Might as well be live action at times.
Yes. Didn't they make a live action version of this as well?
I think pretty much most Ghibli films have like some sort of like unlicensed live action, I think,
TV film
version. Yeah. I'm not sure that Takahata would have had much involvement on that one.
No. Do you know what this reminded me of? This reminded me a little bit of Godzilla -1.
Sure,
And I
sure.
think it was because it deals with the harsh realities of civilian life after World War II. And obviously this is more during World War II.
Yeah.
But it kind of gave me kind of, I saw like a relationship between the two films there. So I wondered if maybe potentially it had been an inspiration for the director of Godzilla -1 there, or whether I'm just literally going, World War II, civilian Japan, and just going, I've seen it before.
it's a very big, thick thread that you're pulling on there. No, I think you're right. Again, that also had very young children. I had a very young girl in that movie that was also
who loses her parents,
very dependent. Yeah. But for me, one more little nugget of doom and gloom. I think Alex is I think the ending of this film is an absolute, if it is a trailblazer. I think so whenever we were talking about the pride that Seta has, and he makes a decision to leave his aunt after an argument, and him and Setsuko go to live in the cave that's just basically just next to the village, right underneath everybody's noses, and try to fend for themselves. And unfortunately, as we've kind of already alluded to in the conversation, that Seta passes away. And there's this incredible shot at the end of the film where the war has just ended, and this family who are just beside the cave in their little village residence, and they're coming home, and the dad's home, and everybody lived, and the two teenage girls are there too. And they come back to their house and they say, "Oh, it's still there. Nothing's been bombed. Everything's good. Everything resumes back to normal." And they put on the record. I think it's an old song called "Home, Sweet Home," which is like an opera number. Yeah. And so the camera, the camera in inverted commas pans from their house to the cave where Setsuko and Seta are there no more, and then Setsuko's ghost appears and is playing, and as if she's still happy and alive, and it's just like the most absolute gut punch of a sequence. Like I don't know, up there, it was some of the hardest hitting scenes I've ever seen in the film.
Yeah, truly. But there, I guess in a way, there's a tinge of happiness that their spirits live on. In this world.
That's what we tell ourselves, Alex, isn't it?
That's what we tell ourselves. It definitely leaves its mark. This is definitely the first Ghibli film to kind of stay with me for a long time after the film.
At least 24 hours.
Yeah, at least 24 hours. And yeah, I can't believe they tried to double bill this with My Neighbor Totoro. I did hear some people saying like, "Oh, Totoro's like happy, and then Grave of the Fireflies is sad. So how do you switch those two together?" But they're both a little bit sad, right? They're not. I guess Totoro has a more uplifting ending, but
Totoro has that thing where you're because they're so wishy-washy about what's going on with the mother in that movie, why she's in hospital, that there's like an impending doom that's never fulfilled. So it's ultimately a happy, positive story, but it's kind of stressful to watch it and feel like the happiness is going to end at some point.
Yeah.
But this is just all sad. Yeah, it's hard. You have to understand, guys, listening to an episode like this, it's really hard because it's hard to kind of list jokes and try to be uplifting when everything that's good about the film is intrinsically laced with sadness.
Yeah.
So it is kind of difficult to kind of navigate that. But it is a wonderful film. I will stress that it is so wonderful and so well realized, and it captures humanity in shades of black and white and gray. I think it's worth seeing in that way. It's not a completely nihilistic, cynical film. There is humanity to be found here, and I think it's such an important film to watch. If you want to, even though it's animated, and this is still one of the go-to reflection pieces on what it was like to live on that side of the world during this this period of history. Alex, anymore? Anything else you want to bring to the table? Anything? Do you find any glimmers of light in this conversation?
I mean, I guess, yeah. The film obviously is not a very light film, but I think it shows a different side to Studio Ghibli that I hadn't seen yet, and
Sure.
kind of, although I'm pretty sure this is maybe like the darkest of the films that the studio has released. It does make me think that they're happy to go down this way, and not everything is this kind of fairy tale with, you know, kind of weird looking creatures and kind of childlike wonder. Like, they are willing to go down different paths and explore different things, and that makes me excited for what lies ahead, because we still got a lot of Ghibli films left to go.
Absolutely, Alex. And it's not like you've seen some heavy hitters so far, like in terms of what people talk about in the conversation of Ghibli.
Yep.
But you're not done yet. You know, there's never like you're not in the dark. There's no dark period in this journey. Hopefully, you'll find some more ones that really speak to you, and you've enjoyed just as much as you've enjoyed Grave of the Fireflies. Okay, so now to lighten things up a little bit, Alex. Yes, we did talk about Isao Takahata and his first film this week, but I'm going to go back to Miyazaki for our quiz. I like to do a quiz for the Ghibli Angle. It's something that I've started and I have to stick to. And I promise I'm not going to be asking you to name me castles this week. Instead,
I've been really concerned as to what the quiz for Grave of the Fireflies or the trivia section for Grave of the Fireflies is going to be. If it's going to be as depressing as the film.
Oh no! I chose this week just to be like, there's no right way of doing something thematic to this film that does not come across as grossly insensitive. So I've gone back to Miyazaki. This week, Alex, my segment is called Miyazaki or Mistaken Identity. Oh. So I am going to give you a quote that a famous filmmaker said, or Miyazaki said, and you have to tell me or an artist in general. So I'm going to tell you a quote, and you have to tell me if Miyazaki said it or if somebody else said it. So Miyazaki or Mistaken Identity.
I like it. I like it.
But the commonality between everybody who said these quotes is that they are all artists of some type, creatives of some type, okay?
Sure.
So we're keeping it sort of in a row.
Okay.
So you ready for number one?
I'm ready.
Sure. So this quote, any woman is just as capable of being a hero as any man. Miyazaki or Mistaken Identity?
Considering the amount of female heroes so far in the Ghibli films, I'm going to say this is Miyazaki.
He's off to a start, baby. Yes.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely, Alex. Come on. Is this going to be your first perfect 10? Yeah.
Oh shit, there are 10.
This time there are. Not always, but this time there are. Okay. Number 2. Every child is an artist. The problem is staying an artist when you grow up.
I'm going to say that's somebody else. I'm going to say that's Mistaken Identity.
Okay. Do you want to do you know who that might be? I mean, I'm dumb, so maybe some of these quotes are very famous, and I just maybe smarter people might know these.
It's not coming to me, but my only reason I think that is because I feel like Miyazaki is more about kind of like hard work rather than everybody's an artist kind of thing. I think if art was your thing, then he would say you work really hard at it. He's all about the graft, isn't it? You know what I mean?
That's a really good takeaway. I think movies like Spirited Away or Nausicaa, they're all about work ethic, aren't they?
Yeah.
You sow, you reap what you sow. Okay, so that was actually Pablo Picasso who said that.
Oh.
So you're right.
I am.
That was Mistaken Identity. Number 3, I would rather entertain and hope that people learn something than educate people and hope they were entertained.
That doesn't sound like Miyazaki to me. I'm going to say hidden, mistaken identity.
Hidden gems. Mistaken identity is correct. That was Sir Walt Disney.
Okay.
Famously never a sir, obviously. Well, yeah. You see, I think, yeah, you've got to know Miyazaki pretty quickly then.
Yeah, we've painted a good picture of him in our episode so far, I think.
A chain smoker with the internal heart of a child, but the exterior of a pissed off man. Number 5. I think it's really good for a family or children to have a dog, cat, bird, or whatever to grow up with.
I'm just because there's a lot of creatures. I am gonna say like creatures in all of his films. There's cats and Totoros and all kinds of things. So I'm gonna say Miyazaki.
That's correct. You're 4 for 4 so far, buddy. 5 for 5.
I'm trying to deduce it as best I can. So, maybe I'll get there this time. 50%. We're already there.
Number 6. I don't dream at night. I dream at day. I dream all day. I'm dreaming for living.
Ooh. I don't know. That's difficult. I tried
to make some of them a little bit more like,
Yeah, I feel like that could be Miyazaki, but I'm going to say mistaken identity.
Oh, you good instincts. Good instincts. Do you know who it might have been? Well, I guess you wouldn't.
Dream. Steven Spielberg?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's Steven Spielberg.
He likes dreams.
He does like dreams.
Do I get 2 points for that?
I mean, I just wrote ×2 beside it, so yes. So you're 7 out of 6 right now.
Damn.
Number 7, problems begin the moment we're born. We're born with infinite possibilities, only to give up one after another. To choose one thing means to give up another. That's inevitable. But what can you do? That's what it is to live. Ooh, deep.
Bit of a more down note. I mean, I guess it definitely feels like it could be him, or maybe it's Takahata. Takahata might have those feelings after this. I don't know what to say.
You got to pick one, buddy.
Mistaken identity.
It's your first bum note.
Oh no!
It was Miyazaki.
I had this feeling it might have been Takahata, so I thought maybe you were getting me on that one. Okay.
Miyazaki can say some wonderful things sometimes, and sometimes he can hit you with a bum note.
Yeah.
It depends what day. Number 8. When I start creating a villain, I start liking the villain, and so the villain is not really evil.
Oh, I don't feel that's Miyazaki at all. That's got to be a mistaken identity.
Unfortunately, it actually is Miyazaki.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Maybe I've not seen enough films with these
I didn't like any of the villains.
Well, it's not that, but like none of the villains, they just all seem very villainous. Like there's no like moral thing going on a lot of the time.
It almost makes me interested that, Castle in the Sky, where we have the pirate woman. I wonder if she was originally supposed to be a villain and then he ended up liking that character.
Yeah.
It feels like that when you watch it.
But then like the FBI agents in that film are just
yeah,
pretty evil, aren't they?
But then you don't fall in love with those guys.
Yeah. But then again, I guess as well, like the Oms could have been evil in Nausicaa, and then they're not really.
Yeah. I think Yubaba, for how wicked she is pretty fun and spirited away.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe I was completely wrong. All right, 2 wrong now. Damn it! I wasn't going to get the perfect 10.
Number 9. Well, maybe if you get like a ×2 again, maybe if you get like if there is an opportunity, who knows?
Who knows?
Number 9. My intent is to have viewers be there in the moment when the sketches were being drawn and to have them share the emotions. Be there in the moment when the sketches were being drawn.
No. From what I know about Takahata's future work, I feel like that might be something he'd say then. So if I said mistaken identity and Takahata.
Boy, you're You're cooking.
I'm cooking.
You got it. You got it. It's
got it.
Takahata.
I knew you were going to put a Takahata one in there somewhere.
I think you're referring to, because later on, especially his last film, The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, is basically all done in sketches.
Yeah,
so,
I've not seen anything from them, but like I've seen. Well, when I say nothing, I mean
probably
like clips,
have like,
but I've seen like screenshots, and they look very kind of vignette-y.
Yes,
and so that's all that got me thinking about that.
Awesome, well done. I mean, so technically, because you've had 2 double points, you're 9 out of 9. I'm gonna say it like that. I'm gonna spin it that way.
All
so
right.
if you get this last
very
one,
kind of you.
No, you've earned it. You've earned it.
Thank you.
Number 10, Alex. Your final question. Reality is for people that lack imagination.
Okay, reality is for people who lack imagination.
I do. That's a personal favorite of mine. I like that.
I feel like that isn't Miyazaki.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say Mistaken Identity. Reality. I don't know, like Michael Jackson? I don't know.
Well, it begins with an M, but it wasn't Michael Jackson.
Michael
Miyazaki. it was Hayao Miyazaki. I am so sorry, my friend, for your loss.
So close.
It was very close. 9
So
points at the end of that, Alex. Well done. I think that's the best performance we have had on the Ghibli segment so far. So, yeah. I'm making them too easy, obviously, aren't I?
Yes. No. I mean, no. Okay, Chris. The next film that I'm going to be watching is Kiki's Delivery Service. So, sell it to me, baby.
Yes. So I love it. Look, everybody listening who's been keeping up to date with the Ghibli Angle so far will know I like every one of these movies. If you listen to the podcast really early on in their early days, you would have known that I would have put this on my top 10 comfort films. So if you like to cuddle up whenever you're having a sick day, actually being sick, not a pretend sick day, you're curling up on the sofa, feeling sorry for yourself, Kiki's Delivery Service is the perfect remedy. It not only mirrors that feeling that you're having in that moment, but it's a perfect sort of remedy for that. And I love this movie. It's the tale of a young teenage witch who leaves her family home to go out into the big world and mature as a young lady and find independence. And it's a low key film. It's it's very subtle, but it's a lot of big feelings wrapped up in this, and it's a coming of age story that I think a lot of people relate to. I certainly do. So hopefully you will too, Alex.
I was going to say, Chris, it sounds like the story of your life.
Yes, I was a young witch. And then, yes, I opened a delivery service and now I am here. One thing leads to another.
One thing leads to another.
Well, unfortunately, that has been the episode for this week. I say it as if it's bad. Like, that's a bad thing. Unfortunately, there's been an episode this week. Anyway, though, hopefully you've enjoyed it. And if you have enjoyed it, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or review. We really do appreciate it. If you'd like to keep up to date with us, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Film Angle.
We also have a Film Angle playlist. If you want to listen to what we listen to, you can find that in the show notes. Be sure to catch us next time for more cinematic discussions. Goodbye.
See ya.